So welcome back to part 2. We had a brief break there, but we're back. So do you want to just pick up where we were?
You were talking about, am I confident with Pathfinder? You hear my hesitation there. I don't know is the answer to that. I'm hopeful. I've had my say in Pathfinder because we had a meeting in regards to domestic abuse organisations about Pathfinder and about the way forward, how we deal with cases. But I don't know because I'll give you a history lesson, right? So divorce. So before we had the divorce portal, we used to send petitions off, and it used to take about 6 months to get even any result on it. It took forever, right? So then what we did was we opened up all these little courts to deal with all the divorces. So we went from like 2 or 3 courts to about 10 courts to deal with it. So they opened all these courts up, and then they closed them all. Closed. And then they moved to the divorce portal. And then that had problems. And then this happened and that happened. And then because we closed all these courts, they said, well, why have you closed all these courts? Because now we've got backlogs on this, and this. So I'm hoping that we kind of move forward and we actually get somewhere, because the divorce portal's working. That's great. We're making applications now by the portal. It's still got technical difficulties, but Pathfinder in itself, I'm hoping, wishing and praying that it does work out for families. Because again, we're not talking about money. Money you can get back, can't you, eventually? You're talking about children's lives at the end of the day. And if you're not making the right decision, it could be catastrophic for kids.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's the sadness of it all. And I've spoken to judges and they realise the seriousness of it. And I've been to talks about it where they've realised the seriousness, because what they've done, there was a really good one, they did a lecture on it where they interviewed these children in proceedings, and then years later they interviewed them afterwards as well.
Yeah.
And there was clear effects on it. They want to have their say, if they're what we call give it competent, that they understand what's
Yeah.
happening.
Yeah.
Um, but it's big stakes. That's the problem. You're talking of big stakes. If you get it wrong, it's major at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, it's a difficult one because again, on cases, there's no defined kind of criteria. We've got the welfare checklist, but you can apply that any way you want to apply that, in all honesty. So I try and advise clients as best I can as to what I believe is the outcome going to be, but I'm honest with them. I say, look, I can't guarantee anything to you. And if I did guarantee something to you, if you went to a lawyer and they sat down with you and said, I guarantee this is what's going to happen with this case, they're lying to you because they don't know what's
Exactly.
going to happen. And this is the other thing that your viewers need to be careful of, is the snake oil salesman. I've worked at firms. I've been with the best lawyers, and I've been with the absolute worst lawyers in the world. And I've picked up things as to how I wouldn't deal with a case, and how I would not deal with a case, and how I would deal with a case. Um, but again, I've spoken to clients who've been to other law firms and the conversations that they've had. And I think to myself, I wouldn't in a million years say that to a client. I wouldn't in a million years kind of advise on this, and this. Um, I had one where there was there wasn't any concerns whatsoever. We'd already established and already dealt with the case, but the solicitor acting previously decided to contact the local authority directly and ask them, do you have any concerns about our client? And it's like, well, you're putting a red rag to the bull then, aren't you, really? Like, if they've not contacted you and they've not said they've got any concerns, don't go on their radar, because then they'll go, actually, we'll look into this and we'll see. So again, what I could say to your viewers is that if you are looking for legal representation, just make sure you're happy with them. You're paying at the end of the day.
Yeah.
You're paying for their service. And if you don't feel comfortable and you don't feel that they're up to scratch,
But I think that's the problem, because when you are, most victims are traumatized, aren't they? Let's
yeah,
face
yeah,
it. Most
yeah,
of them are. And they are almost grabbing onto any little bit of hope. And
Yeah,
then when they're sat in front of somebody that is legally minded, that isn't give 'em, if they are giving them that wrong advice or giving them that false hope,
yeah, yeah.
it's absolutely can be life destroying.
It's bad because at the end of the day, I say I don't give anyone false hope. I say what I say to them is this: say if I'm panicking, then you need to panic.
Yeah.
And I've only had that recently where I've had a panic because the client has had such a good results in the past that they've got complacent and they've kind of gone, Richard will sort it out. He always does. He always sorts it out. I'm like, not in this scenario, mate. I can't because you've not done what I've asked you to do and I've advised you and you need to do X, Y, and Z and you've gone, I'm not doing it. Why should I do it? So again, it's just making sure that one, that you feel comfortable with your solicitor. Two, that when your solicitor stands up or your representation stands up, you know full well that they are putting your case fully, right? Now, that's not to say that if you raise a point with your solicitor or barrister and they go, we're not going to put that forward, they might not put
Mm,
it forward because again, family law is in essence a game. And that's really bad to put it that way, but it is. Because say with child arrangement proceedings, right? If you start spouting that your ex-partner hasn't paid child maintenance for X amount of months, that
you can
makes
just
you look bad.
yeah, and you can see how it's gonna roll and how
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
gonna
yeah,
play out, can't you? And it is that unfortunately, that is what I will say. You've got to learn to play the game and learn
yeah,
to
yeah, yeah.
play it quick. Learn
I've
to
had
play it
I've had
quick.
clients moan and say, "You didn't raise this." I said, "I didn't need to raise it because without it, you got the result that you wanted." So you don't need to fire all your cards all at once, because if you fire all your cards all at once, you're giving your perpetrator every chance to prepare what they know what you've got against them. So you hold back some. That's the way you have to be. You have to hold back some of it. Um, and again, it's just playing the right tactics on it and not being disillusioned that you've got to fire everything off all at once like a shotgun.
Mm,
Because if you do that, then your perpetrator knows what you're doing.
yeah. It's almost like playing you just don't know. It's like rolling a dice, isn't it?
Yeah.
You just do not know
Yeah.
what outcome's gonna be.
Say with the child maintenance, the amount of cases I've had where, say, we'll stereotype, say, mum raises and says, well, dad hasn't paid child maintenance for so many months. My argument's going to be, so the reason why then you're trying to reduce down contact is because you're after child maintenance then, isn't it? You're trying to get more child maintenance. So you're not bothered about the kids. You're not interested about the children's welfare or the best interests in any shape or form. You're after money. That's all it is. So again, you have to kind of make sure that you're advising clients to say, look, this is a PR piece. When you go before the courts, I've got to make you look as good as possible, right? I can't control what happens when we get out of that courtroom because if you start then sending abusive messages to your ex-partner going, you're a scumbag and all, then
Mhm.
that's not my fault. That's your fault because you need to make sure that you're playing the game and you reserve yourself because
But
no one,
ultimately, judges aren't bothered about child maintenance anyway, are they?
no, not
Because
at
it's
all.
not even in that. It's not even. It's in wrong arena if you're going to start bringing child maintenance
But
up.
then that child, the other issue I've got is that people link child maintenance to child arrangements. It's that weird pay to play. If you want to see your kid, you're going to pay child maintenance. No, it's not in any shape or form. It's bad if the child maintenance has not been paid, but there might be reason behind that on X, Y, and Z level. But at the same time, they're two separate issues. But overall, it's a PR piece. It's knowing what you've got evidence to support and knowing what actually you can put forward. Because if we make a Scott schedule and you put 20 allegations down and
Just
you've got
explain. Just explain what one is, because
so
people
a,
are going to be listening that
and then be
won't
going,
know.
what's the Scott schedule? The
Yeah.
Scott schedule is basically a list of allegations. It's a table that we do. So you'd put down the date and time when it happened, if you know the date and time when it happened, and what abuse actually occurred, along with supporting evidence. Okay. What people fail to do is they'll put a generalized allegation and just say, he hit me or she hit me. Okay, when did it happen then? What evidence have you got to support that? Well, I haven't. It just happened. Did you report it to the police? No. Oh, I've reported it after we separated. Okay, so you didn't report it at the time, but you reported it afterwards. So again, that weakens it a little bit because it makes it look like you've reported it after the event, which I know, fair enough. People do report incidents later on than actually when it occurred. But the courts will use that and say, well, you've only reported it now because of X, Y, and Z reason. Did you go and see a doctor? No, I didn't see a doctor. Have you got any pictures of any injuries? No injuries. Did you speak to anyone about it? Have you got text messages about it? No. So again, when you're advised by a solicitor as to your Scott schedule, it's better to have as many of the allegations supported by evidence. What many perpetrators do, they do the scattergun approach, where they'll fire as many allegations as possible without any evidence at all in order to try and create this bad character in the hope one of them sticks. And it doesn't work because the court's not interested. The court want to know the specifics and the evidence to support this happened. Um, so again, if you've got a decent lawyer, they will advise you on that. They will tell you exactly what you need to provide. They will go through everything with you. If you have got recordings, amazing, because again, words speak well, the recordings speak 1,000 words, so to speak.
Yeah.
If you haven't, then whatever text messages or anything like that at all can back you up.
Yeah.
Um, but again, it's just knowing exactly what to put forward, because if you put in a very serious allegation and you've got no evidence to back that up, then the courts are going to go, well, this is all hot air then, isn't it? Because you've got no evidence to back up what's happened. It becomes a he said, she said situation.
Yeah.
So you just have to be wary on it.
Yeah. I think it's just so complex, isn't it? And I suppose it's hard because you've got to see both sides of the fence, aren't you?
Yeah, yeah,
And that's the thing. That's the thing with and it is hard when you've got victims that are sitting and listening to it with their jaws wide open, thinking, "This can't be right. How
no,
is this the law? How
no.
is this the law? How can this be happening?"
The only advice I would say, like I say, victims of domestic abuse, they do not realise they're a victim of domestic abuse until it's too late. So they don't gather the evidence, they don't gather this and
Exactly.
this.
Exactly.
The perpetrator goes on their phone and then attempts to try and delete messages and things like that. Um, or they'll go on their phone to try and take stuff to try and use against them. Again, it's to cause embarrassment. That's what they'll try and do. So the only thing I can advise is just be wary. And again, if someone is listening today and they've got an inkling they might be suffering domestic abuse, um, or they've got a kind of feeling that something's not right in the relationship, then I would urge you to start considering collating stuff together. Because again, it's not a situation of, well, I hope your relationship fails. It's a situation of, if your relationship fails and you do realize, well, actually this abuse gets worse and worse and worse, they aren't going to hesitate. They're not going to hold back, because
No.
if you leave them, and we've said this before, that whole phrase of, if I can't have you, no one's going to have you. Now, whether that's severe enough to be a fatality, I bloody hope not.
Mhm.
But if it's not as severe as that, and it's going to be to try and tarnish you and to try and prevent you from having this happy life that you all deserve, um, you've got to make sure that you're prepared to stand your ground, because you have
Yeah.
one life. And if
I
you've got
know.
someone who's gunning for you to stop you from having that happy life, you're gonna be depressed about it all. So again, that's the only thing I can urge, is that you just start preparing, talk to your family about it. If it is that bad, and that you realize about it all, have those conversations. If in your head, if you're thinking it's not that bad, so it's all right, I'd still have those conversations, because if you start talking to people who are objective about it, and you start saying, well, let's use an example. He or she makes me sleep on the floor if I've done something bad. You might think, oh, he or she's joking about it. No, no, you shouldn't have to do that in any shape or form. And if you speak to family, friends, and all that jazz, and they say to you, look, that's not normal, that's not right, then it helps to have that third party kind of collaborate with you to say, you need to get out of it. And there's ways you can get out of it. As much as I've kind of been a bit negative about the way forward, about we've not really made massive amounts of progress, we've made a lot more progress than we did a few years ago. I was in
Mm,
Nottingham for a case, and me being bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, saying to a judge that there's been domestic abuse, and the judge said to me, "Well, did the child see?" And I went, "No." And the judge went, "Well, who cares then? I'm not bothered. If the child didn't see, then who really cares?" We've come away from that now. That's not the issue anymore. We don't have that ignorance of it. And there is organisations out there to help, and there's organisations to talk to. Um, and if you don't feel comfortable talking to a family friend or whatever, then reach out to these organisations. And that covers for men as well. We've now got organisations that cover men in relation to domestic abuse.
yeah,
Um, because again, I say as much as it is today, we're talking about women being affected. Everyone gets affected by domestic abuse. And it doesn't just have to be a friend, it can be a family member, it can be the old, it can be the young, and all that. But it's just kind of reaching out and having those conversations and not keeping it all to yourself. That's the way
yeah,
forward.
yeah. It is. There's been a lot around mandatory training for judges,
Yeah,
and you would automatically assume that they are trained.
I'm smiling. You're right. Well, this is it. All right. Say, let's take Judge out of the equation. Right. You go and see a mechanic. Right. And they tell
Yeah,
you that I've had mandatory training on how to align your wheels. Right. You'd kind of go, of course you have. You're a mechanic. Why wouldn't you? Or a plumber going, I've had training on how to fit this new valve on a toilet. Well, of course you have. You're a plumber. It's the same for judges. You'd expect that it's not mandatory training. It's just training. They should all be getting it. They've got to do it and they've got to be involved. See this poster behind me here? The wonders of technology. This one. So I'm
yeah,
friends with Sam Beckinsale. So she
yeah.
and some others directed, and she's narrates this domestic abuse film called Love. And we put on a screening for that. And she's been going up and down the country having this screening of Love. We did it in Birmingham last year, I want to say. Um, I'm a fanboy, so I got her to sign it. That's why it's on the wall. Um,
Well, I'm hoping that she's going to do a podcast with me, and we have been in touch with each other, so I'm hoping she's going to
just tell
come
her
on.
that Richard's got the poster on the wall in his office,
I will.
and printed especially off. But again, the whole idea of that was to reach out to everyone, including judges, to talk about it. Um, it's not a nice film. It's not a film where you kind of you leave at the end and feel warm and fuzzy, but it's a film that kind of it makes you think about everything about relation to domestic abuse. It encapsulates all the problems that victims feel and how they feel about it and what they face. And that's the issue. It's just
And where can people watch that, Richard?
I couldn't tell you if I wanted to. I don't know. Sam will probably have links all over.
Yeah,
I'm plugging it not because like I say I've got any involvement. I'm plugging it because it's such a great film.
yeah.
Like I say I find it difficult to talk about domestic abuse to people because you can lecture on for hours on end, and it's a lecture, isn't it? It's me just talking about it. But until you actually feel how a victim feels, then you'll never. And again, I hope no one ever has to really have to feel how it is to be a victim. But until you can empathise, until you can understand, um, the only one video apart from Sam's film Love is and I should get some kind of like thing, but Engel is it Voila? Is it It's not Engelbert Humperdinck. It's Andrea Ria. He's the do you know the orchestra man? You'll
No.
probably you've probably seen him. but they
I will
did
have, but
a cover of Voila. And
right.
Voila is it's a foreign song. It's in French, um, and it's Here I Am. That's what the translation is. Here I am, and it's about someone who has faced domestic abuse, and it's about being seen, being heard, being listened to, um, despite going through all those problems. And if any of your viewers can YouTube it, um, it's beautiful, absolutely beautiful. I used it for one of my presentations, and my whole family were getting sick and tired of me because I was sending it to them and going, "Listen to this, it's really good." And I'd have it in my car, and my so she was 2 at the time, my daughter, I'd have what voila, voila, and she'd be looking at me like, "This isn't Baby Shark. Like, come on, let's change this. I've heard this a few times. Let's change this now." But it honestly, if your viewers get a chance to listen to it, it's just a beautiful piece, and it kind of encapsulates the feelings and thoughts of victims, because a lot of victims, again, when they realize they are victims, they just feel that they're not listened to and they're not heard, because no one jumps out and goes to say at work, because that's what it was. My presentation was talking about to employers about victims of domestic abuse. And it's, as much as it's nice that we've got these policies in place where you say you can come to me if you want to talk about domestic abuse, or have you been facing it and all that,
Mm,
no one's going to take that first step, because they go in with this mask, the mask that everything is absolutely fine. The house is burning
yeah.
down, the car's this and all that, but it's all good. Um, so again, until we can kind of allow someone to take off that mask and feel comfortable to do so, we're still going to have these problems that people won't come forward. Um,
That's kind of why I wanted building in town as well, because we're all lived experience.
yeah,
So I wanted it to be a publicly known building where women can come and just talk to us and
yeah,
ask questions. And
yeah,
if
yeah,
they need that validation, then it is kind of like finding your tribe, because I do think that, you know, if you're speaking to lived experience, we get it, and it's
yeah, yeah, yeah,
easier to be
yeah.
able to open up to us, because they won't get that look as if like, "What?" You
Well,
know? Yeah.
my
"Really?"
life's
Nah.
happy. I'm okay. My husband, my
Yeah.
wife is absolutely fine. Well,
Yeah.
good for
Yeah.
you. I hope that goes
Ye
well for you. Yeah, great.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, well, I were an hairdresser for 30 years, so I
Yeah,
kinda,
yeah.
I've heard a lot of that.
We're going to
But
Tenerife
actually
for
when
a week.
yeah, yeah, but actually when you do, kinda scrape the surface,
That, do you know
everybody's
what?
got
That's the sadness of it all. I say I'm say around the West Midlands. So I'm from Derby originally, but moved to the West Midlands. And doing the job that I do, sometimes you just take a step back. So I was in Merry Hill, it's our shopping centre, and I took a step back, and you just see all these people walking by. And like you say, everyone's really good at putting a mask on. But actually, if you went into the nitty gritty of everyone's lives, you'd realize it's not all sunshine and moonbeams and all that jazz.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
and it's been eye-opening doing the domestic abuse work, because
yeah,
I was kind of a naive to problems, and I'm hoping now I'm not cold to it all. I'm still as passionate and as still emotional about it as I was when I was young, when I first started it. But I
yeah,
remember talking to employers, and they used to say, "Well, it's really niche what you do. It's really niche area of law that you do. It's really quirky." I was like, "It's not quirky." Like they said, "Well, yeah, but it doesn't really affect everyone, does it?" And I was like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah, it does." Like you don't realise that the majority of family cases, there's a little line of domestic abuse where it's affected.
mm,
And again, to have the conversation and to talk to people about it, over the years, I've just seen more and more cases coming in. The other issue that you've got though with that, say I'm dealing with the angels in my view as to who I'm representing, but we had the changes to legal aid. Do you remember the changes to legal aid? April,
it's changing a lot though, isn't it?
when
It's
was
just
it?
changed again.
Uh, April 2017, I want to say, when we changed it to actually domestic abuse. It might have been a bit earlier than that, or 2000. No, it might have been earlier than that, because I think I qualified in 2015. So we changed it to legal aid for domestic abuse victims.
Yeah.
So at that time, the evidence to show that you're a victim of domestic abuse was a non-molestation order. Right. So we went in Derby, we went from 8 non-molestation orders a week to 8, I think it was 150 non-molestation orders. So the judge at the time, the designated family judge for Derby, wrote an email to everyone going, look, I know what you're up to. I know what you're trying. You're trying to get a non-molestation order to back up your legal aid application. But if I find out that you know full well that your applications have no merits whatsoever, I'm going to be contacting the SRA and I'm going to be making a complaint. And then the following weeks after that, they went from 150 to 80 a week. And then
Mm.
they've gone a bit quieter and quieter and quieter. But and this is the problem. A lot of people have tried to access legal aid when there's been no domestic abuse, and they've
Yeah.
just kind of exaggerated problems that we've had. Um, it's like, so do you know about divorces? We've got the no fault divorce in place.
Yeah. Yeah.
So before we used to have the grounds for divorce,
Mm-hmm.
well, there's one big ultimate ground. It was the marriage irretrievably broken down. But to support that, there's been adultery, which we barely ever use because it was
Yeah.
just difficult to use, unreasonable behaviour,
Mm-hmm.
2-year separation, 5-year separation, and all that.
And
Unreasonable behaviour.
neglect one of them as well, but
Well,
they're
that
impossible to prove, aren't they?
it falls under unreasonable behaviour. So unreasonable behaviour, what we used to do back in the day, um, we used to kind of take it as a subjective test. So we just put down nonsense kind of particulars. So a lot
Yeah,
of
yeah,
family
yeah.
lawyers used to put down he smells, he snores, and he watches
Yeah.
NFL kind of thing.
Yeah.
Um, and we'd put it in, and we'd be neglectful ourselves in the sense that we'd just kind of go, well, the court's going to accept it. It's going to be absolutely fine. Um, and then they changed it. So there was a case of Owens and Owens, and Owens was basically an elderly couple, and the wife, Mrs. Owens, put in the divorce. And at the time, we were trying to protest for the no fault divorce. So a lot of family lawyers were saying there should be no fault, it should just go through. So they used her case because Mr. Owens had a bit of money and he didn't accept the marriage was over. He says, I don't think it's over. I think I've been all right. I don't think I've been unreasonable. So again, these weren't her particulars, but I assume they were on lines of this. He smells, he snores, and he doesn't put the bin out kind of thing.
Yeah.
So the first judge says, I don't think he's been unreasonable, so I'm not going to grant you petition. She then appealed, and then that judge said, I don't think he's been unreasonable. So she had to wait 5 years then for a divorce. But in the meantime, we then dealt with
For
no.
it to dissolve, for
Well,
the marriage to
before she could then
dissolve.
apply for 5 years, 5 years separation. They used her as a guinea pig. They used her as the protest piece, which was wrong, in all honesty. And then they brought out the no fault divorce. So no fault divorce sounds amazing because again, your perpetrator, they can't put up a fight. If you want to divorce them, as long as you've done it on a sole application, they can't put up a fight with it all because if they don't acknowledge the divorce petition, then you go for deemed service anyway. You do that. That's not a problem. But they can't contest the divorce. They can't say, I don't want to divorce you. They've got no leg to stand on. But the downside to that, and there's two downsides. One is you can't go for costs against your perpetrator. So before we used to have what's called a prayer at the back of the divorce petitions, right? And it was basically as it says, I pray for this, I pray for that, and I pray for my costs at the end. Yeah. And we used to then get cost orders against the perpetrators for the divorce. You can't do that now. You can't claim costs unless the other side agrees to pay the costs. And you
Yeah.
can imagine, guess how many agreed to pay the costs? Nil point. And then the other issue you've got is the principle of the matter, isn't it? Because if you are a victim of domestic abuse and you're separating because they were abusive to you, to then have a divorce petition that says neither
No
party
fault.
was at fault,
Mm.
it's a bit of a kick in the stomach, isn't it, really?
Yeah.
Um, but I again, it's the balancing act because it's either you eat your principles or you eat it down, or you don't get a divorce, because again, it stops the perpetrator.
I always just think though with that, like when before non-fault, I just think it don't really matter who asks to see why you got divorced. Do you know what I mean? It's just like
Yeah,
it's over, isn't it? And
it's
that's the
done.
most important thing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
That
yeah. Yeah.
it's done.
It's done.
Um
And I
and
can't imagine there's many victims out there that kind of take the stance that I'd rather keep my you know what I mean? I'd rather keep my dignity in that sense and put it down that they were unreasonable than actually just get the divorce over and done with. And many people, unfortunately, some can't afford to get it sorted, but there's legal help forms they can do for that to get the court fee paid. Um, they just want it done. Just want to get it
I
over and
know,
done with.
I
That's it.
know.
So
Yeah. Is there anything else that we need to talk about?
I don't know. I don't know what your viewers would want to hear. I think it's just keep on going.
It
I think
is.
the message from me, um, I've I'm a little bit pessimistic about stuff, but again, let me be pessimistic, because I'd rather be pessimistic and carry on, keep trooping forward to help victims of domestic abuse and keep kind of pushing the message
Yeah.
than lying through my teeth and saying we're good, we're all right, we're getting
Yeah.
there. Because
I think there needs to be accountability on
yes,
solicitors. I think there needs to be, but like we said, they are putting that they are specialising
yeah,
in family law and they're specialising in domestic abuse and things like that, and using organisations like mine for photo
uh,
opportunities to be able to put it on the website and go, look here, this is what we do. Um, which at the beginning I didn't really click on to what they were doing. Do you know what I mean? But then it became
but
quite
it's
obvious.
the problem you've got though is that, and this is what I learned quite early on doing all of this. It's scratching. It's what is it? Feeding the right devil,
Mm,
because again, you want to help people and you want to be able to make sure that you can carry on helping people. And the big organizations that pay and sponsor and do all of this and do all of that, um, you've got to feed them to be able to do it. I've had conversations with people and I've wanted to put projects in place and help people. And they've said to me, you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. You do this favor for me, and then I'll do that favor for you. And I'm thinking, well, my favor is trying to reach out to help all of these people kind of get the help that they need. And your favor is you have a chat with my mate for a bit and see if you can give him some free legal advice.
mm,
And it's kind of, you feel dirty inside that you've got to do it, but then you kind of think to yourself, well, in the big grand scheme of things, it's helping all these people. But again, for viewers, you've just got to find that lawyer that you know and you trust, to be able to represent you and do the best for you. You are paying for them. They are not doing you a favor. And to these organizations as well, if anyone says they're doing you a favor in taking on your legal aid cases, that is rubbish. You are the keeper of the keys. You are the ones that ensure that these legal firms are able to open their front doors. You're
yeah,
sending them work.
yeah,
So I'm not asking for the red carpet from firms. I'm not asking for the red carpet from the courts. What I'm asking for is the standard to which we are helping victims, helping clients, helping families isn't the bare minimum standard. It is the maximum standard. And we were talking about the MBE issue, weren't we, earlier,
yeah,
off camera? And as much as I'm honoured to have an MBE, I'm also a bit embarrassed to have an MBE, because at the same time, my MBE is for legal service of domestic abuse victims. Um, and to get an MBE, you've got to be doing more than what your colleagues in the industry are doing in relation to domestic abuse work. I don't feel that I'm doing any more. I'm going above and beyond. I don't feel like I am. I feel like I'm just doing the standard. I'm helping people, giving the proper advice and ensuring that the cases are being managed properly. So to me, if I'm being told I'm doing above and beyond, that means to me that actually the legal sector aren't doing that. That they're just doing the bare minimum just to scrape on by. Now that doesn't
yeah,
count to every solicitor. I don't want to label every solicitor in the whole of the UK not meeting scratch, because I've met few solicitors and they really do go for it. But I've
Yeah.
also been against some solicitors, and I've rang rings round them.
Yeah.
I've been the way I instruct barristers is if I go against them and they try and run rings around me, then they're hired. They'll be on my cases. If I've been against barristers and I've literally jumped over them and run rings around them till the cows come home, I
Yeah.
go, I am never instructing you to do a case for me, because at
Yeah.
the end of the day, I want my clients to have the absolute best, not just the bare minimum to do it. If I don't trust that that barrister would do a better job than me or the same job than me in court, then they don't even come on my radar. So I think we just got to make sure that we are giving the best out. We're helping people, and the big message, and it's the hippy dippy whippy message, is just everyone helping each other.
Yeah.
I stand up and do talks, and I get kind of blank faces when I tell that to people. But is it that that quote, "No man is an island"? Well, no person is an island, and we've all got to kind of join our heads together. And like we said
It
before,
is. It is. It's about all coming together.
yeah, more heads are better than one head,
Yeah.
because it's the experience, it's the knowledge, and it's having that voice to be able to come forward and deal with matters.
It is. It is, and we've all just got to keep doing what we're doing,
Yeah,
and just keep having more and more voices that we can get heard, then the more chance there is, isn't there?
yeah, exactly.
So I'm gonna love you and leave you.
That's fine. That's fine. Thank you so
Thank you
much for
so
having me
yeah,
today.
no, thank you so much for your time. Please
It's been
don't
brilliant.
bill me.
I'll try not to. I'll try not to. But no, it's been my pleasure. It's been really good talking
Yeah, it
to you.
has been good. Yeah, I'll speak to you soon. Please keep in touch, won't you?
Will do. Brilliant.
Be
Thank you
good.
so much.
Thanks,
Cheers.
Richard. Bye.
Bye.